Yeah, I think that's a very important question. What people need to bear in mind is under the state of disaster, the small council of ministers and their advisors basically have unlimited powers. They absolutely sidestepping government and parliamentary oversight, which is supposed to be a necessary element in a democracy such as South Africa. So that's why we've seen all kinds of ludicrous regulations being brought out, apparently for our own safety. We've also seen millions and millions and millions of rands being stolen and looted through corruption because people are now also sidestepping procurement processes under the guise of emergency procurement. We've also seen the government has used these same powers to deploy soldiers on our streets. We've seen people being beaten to death by these same law enforcement officers simply because they feel empowered. And we cannot continue on like this. It's been 2 years now. The ANC has clearly shown that it does not have South Africans' best interest at heart. And the state of disaster needs to be ended, and it needs to be ended immediately.
We're almost back to normal. And I'm just kind of thinking, what are these further restrictions that is going to impede our progress going forward? And what would they be, obviously?
Yeah, well, look, at the moment, there are very few restrictions, but we know that this can also change at a whim. President Ramaphosa has done this many times where on a Sunday evening he'll announce that all of a sudden certain stores might not open up again in the next morning, all restaurants are limited, etc. So as long as we are in this state of disaster, that possibility is always there. And then, of course, certain industries like the hospitality industry, for instance, are still suffering because they're still limited to the certain amount of people they can house in venues and so forth. So even though many of these regulations are not really relevant at the moment, there are still industries that are seriously suffering.
We have a huge or a high unemployment rate in the country, and undoubtedly these past 2 years has further impacted on that issue. Lifting these final few restrictions, do you think it will make a meaningful difference?
Well, it obviously won't make one immediately in the short term, but it will definitely make one in the long term. That is, to say, if the ANC does not further destroy the economy with the bad policy decisions. But it definitely needs to be lifted, and there are such far-reaching consequences for living under a state of disaster like this with semi-authoritarian rule, because that's what it is. Parliament doesn't have oversight of what's happening here. So even though the economic recovery might take a while, the state of disaster needs to be lifted immediately.
Okay, and I know that AfriForum has teamed up with dearSA on this particular issue. But I understand that dearSA's campaigns regarding legal action to end the state of disaster. And another important issue here is mandatory vaccinations. And we understand that 270,000 public comments have so far been received on this matter, which obviously indicates that this is a critical issue for many citizens. So you are going to go ahead with your legal action to end the state of disaster. How long do you think that's going to take, and what exactly is it going to entail?
Well, we filed our papers in February already. We're still waiting for a court to be assigned to us. And the reason that's taking a bit longer now is that government has indicated that they are going to challenge our position. Now, that's a clear indication that they're not planning on giving up their powers or bringing an end to the state of disaster anytime soon. So, we're going ahead with this. Our arguments are that there's no reason that there should be a state of disaster at the moment because there's no disaster. If we look at the hospitalization rate and the infection rates, and especially with Omicron seeming to be a less dangerous variant of previous infections we've seen, there is no reason to keep the state of disaster going, and that's what we'll argue in court as well. As far as the issue of mandatory vaccination is concerned, AfriForum's position is that people should be free to choose what type of medical treatments or preventions they take. And of course, there's the whole issue of bodily integrity, where people should have the right to decide over their own bodies. In the same vein, we also want people who do want to take the vaccine to have the vaccine available, but it should remain a choice thing. That's AfriForum's position on that.
Okay, so Jacques, coming to the end of the interview, but let's ask this question, which I think is important. Government might argue that there's a fifth wave on the horizon, and because they're not sure what it probably is going to look like, how serious or how mild it might be. They need to keep the state of disaster in place just to mitigate against that fifth wave. How would you respond to that?
I have heard that argument, and to be honest, I think it's ludicrous. First of all, a meteor might strike planet Earth tomorrow. We don't know. You can't go around on unsubstantiated fears and just say we're going to retain a state of disaster in case we get invaded by aliens. That's no argument to use. And then the second point I would use to refute that would be that we've seen how quickly government can implement a state of disaster. So should it really be necessary, I doubt that it will be, they can just re-implement it. So there's no point to just continue to keep it going.
Okay. Going forward then, what is it that you want civil society to be aware of, and what actions do you believe we should be involved in to further add weight to this action, or to the fact that you're going to be taking legal action against the state of disaster and mandatory vaccination?
Well, first of all, I think what people should be very aware of is that one of the reasons government is continually extending the state of disaster, and that's just one of the obvious reasons, is that they're busy adjusting existing health legislation to incorporate COVID-19 regulations. And that's very, very concerning. That means that they're trying to permanently bring some of these regulations in more. That's something that we definitely need to watch very carefully, and civil society needs to keep their eyes on and fight against very hard, because I'm sure it's not going to be in the best interest of South African people, whatever their plans are. And then secondly, I would encourage everyone to please get behind organizations like AfriForum and dearSA, or any other civil rights organization that's fighting these fights on the public's behalf. It's through our supporters and our members that we are able to fight these fights, and just strike the government on its fingers every time it tries to stick it deeper into our cookie jars.
Absolutely, we can't agree more, and we laud organizations like AfriForum, GS, and a whole host of many other such organizations that do speak on behalf of civil society. Jacques Broodryk, marketing campaign manager at AfriForum, thank you indeed for your time, and we will be watching this space closely. Go well, and thank you once again.
Thank you very much.
8:43 News and Views on Salam Media. Do stay with us, and remember, you can become a part of the conversation via any one of our social media platforms. But I always say the easiest way is to use the WhatsApp line, which is 061 766 0355. Next, we are going to be talking with Ahmed Aminji, and he's a sales rep at Liberta. So do stay tuned. We're going to be looking at the issue of, brace yourself for this, good people, the higher food prices that's probably going to be hitting us in the next 3 months, very especially staples like bread and cooking oil. So stay with us and do become a part of the conversation.